Okay, now let's start real coding. As you can see, now we have our data set in front of us, and for each of these tables we will have few tasks. So let's start with the first one. First one for each table is basically to import our data. So we did it successfully, we imported our data here, and now it's time to transform it. Now let's see what we can change in this data set. First, we are able to see this type column here. As you can see, we have for each of these rows, we have type/person. Basically, we don't need this type slash, so we will be deleting that. I'm gonna leave only this person here. So let's see how can we do that. I'm gonna add another cell. So this is our cell. And now we will need first to import libraries that we will be using for data transformation. So basically we will import multiple libraries, not just for this transformation, but for all transformations that we will be applying on our data sets, basically on our tables. So from PySpark .sql .functions. From that, let's import. So let's start with call. This is first library that we will be using. Next one is when. This one we will be using for conditions. Descending we will be using for sorting our data. Now this one is also important for replacing some characters in our data, so that one is also important. And the last one is trim. Basically this will be using to trim space from our columns, so this is also important function. Also, I'm gonna import some data types from, then I can copy this here, so let's paste it here, and now type.types. Import integer type, double type, boolean type, and date type. Okay, perfect. Now we can execute this code. Let's click on this, run cell. Now we are able to see that we have some error here, so let's type E here. Now it's perfect. Let's run one more time. Let's also fix this. And now we successfully imported all these libraries, so let's add another cell. Now this one will be for actually transforming our first table. First table will be customers. And now I'm gonna just, to be easier for you to understand, I'm gonna just put this code there, because for each table we will be importing data, then transforming it, and also exporting to Azure Data Lake Storage. So let's remove this here. We don't need that. Okay, perfect. Now we imported libraries. We have our data. Now let's start transforming. So first step is basically to import this data. And next one will be, as we discussed earlier, to remove this type here. So for that purpose we are going to be using this function replace that we imported here. So let's start typing. I'm going to use this variable that I provided. This is basically my table name, so I use the same name for variable. You can use, for example, df or something else, but this time it's easier because we have multiple tables, so just to be able to recognize each of them. So again, dot, and now type with column, and open parentheses. And now we need first to provide name of our column. So we will be doing this transformation on this column, so it's type. So let's copy this column name here, and I'm gonna paste it here inside quotes. Each column we need to provide in quotes. So next step is to use actually this function that we imported. So let's use this function. And now let's open parentheses once again, and now we need to provide some parameters for this function. As you can see, we have values that we need to provide here. First is column name, then some pattern and replacement. First we need to provide column name. It's also type. Let's copy this one. I'm gonna paste it here. And now it is column, so we will be using just this function that we also imported. Let's place this column name inside this, so now it will be recognized as column. Next argument is what we need to remove. Basically we will need to remove this type slash, and let's provide value that we would like to replace that with. Basically it will be nothing, so I'm going to just provide empty quotes. If I execute this code, I will be able to see what will happen. So let's execute this code, and now as you can see it's successfully completed. Now let's check our data. Let's run this show function one more time just to be able to see our data, and now we are able to see that in this type column we don't have anymore that type slash string that we had. Okay, that's perfect. Now let's move to the next transformation. Next, I would like to remove all duplicates if we have them in this data set. So basically if customer ID has, for example, multiple records, I would like to see only the first one. So how can we do that? We'll be using drop duplicates function for that purpose. So let's see how can you do that. I'm gonna also copy this one here, equal to, and again here, and now let's apply our function, drop duplicates. Let's open parentheses, and now we need to provide only one argument here. Only column in which one we will be searching for duplicates. For example, if we provide this customer ID, for example, we will be searching through this column, and if we have, for example, 2 or more values the same, then those will be removed. Only one will be left. Let's see how can we do that. We need to open quotes, and I'm gonna provide my column name inside these quotes, and it's also necessary to provide everything in these square brackets. So let me just paste it here, and now let's try to execute this code. If I run this cell, it's completed properly, and now let's see our data. Okay, perfect. If I run this, basically we will not be able to see any changes in data, but as you can see, sorting is now different, which means that we already deleted some rows that were duplicates. Basically now we need to sort these values properly. So how can we do that? We'll be using order by function for that purpose. So let's now again copy this here, and now let's use order by, and now I'm gonna need to provide my column name. It's again customer ID. I would like to sort it by customer ID. I'm gonna provide it here, and now when I execute this, I will need to assign that to a variable again. So let's copy that one more time, equal to, and we will be saving that to our variable, basically to our data set. If I run this code, run cell, basically everything is completed properly again, and now let's see our data. It should be sorted based on this column here. Let's check if it's the case. Exactly, it's sorted properly, and now we are able to see our data. Okay, now that we completed that step, let's check what else we need to fix in our data set. Basically, as you can see, in this age column, we have age, which is normal of course, but we also have this male and M. Basically those are entries that we wouldn't like to see in age, so my idea is to remove them. So let's see how can we do that. Now I'm gonna need to filter my data. And now before that, let's first add another cell just to see what we have basically in that column. So I'm gonna copy this one. I'm gonna show you how you can see only one column. You can use select for that purpose. I'm gonna open this, and let's provide column name. It's age in this case. And now this way we will be able to call this column. And now let's use show just to be able to see this column. Let's run this code. Basically my mistake, select. Okay, perfect. And now we are able to see our age column. As you can see, we have this male, this M here, and we need to remove that basically. So let's see how can we do that. I'm gonna remove this. It was just for demonstration. And now let's go to our cell. And next is filtering basically our data. So let's see how can we do that. As you can see, I first need to provide my dataset name, and now let's type dot filter. This is pretty much clear, so we are using filter option. And now what we can do, we need to provide that column that we would like to filter by. So let's use this call function that we imported, and now let's provide name of our column. It's age. Let me just put like this, age. Okay, perfect. And next one is, let's type cast, open parentheses, and then type int, like integer, type again, is not null. Let's open parentheses once again, and now we have our function created. This function will basically go through this H column, and for each values that are not numeric, it will remove them. So it will remove basically those rows, not only in H column, but all these rows belonging to this dataset here. So if I assign this to this variable here, we will be able to see if we completed properly that function. Let's run our cell. We don't have any errors. And now let's see our data set. Let's run this. And now let me just scroll this. Now we are able to see that we don't have any more values like male or something else in this H column, and we completed this task properly. This is also a very useful function, so I think you will be able to use it a lot in your work. We have only one more task here. So what I would like to do, if you check this gender column, you will be able to see that for some entries we have F, for some of them we have male. So basically I would like to standardize that somehow. Basically M should be male. We don't need to have M and male. We will just be able to see male and female. So instead of F we will provide female, instead of M we will provide male. So let's see how can we do that. If I use just that replace function, I will be able to replace this M with male, but also I will be replacing this M with male. So that is not the correct way. So I'm going to use other option. Let me show you how you can do that. Let's press enter and I will add another function. Let's use our data set again. Type with column, open parentheses. And now we need to provide first name of our column. In this case it's gender. Let me remove this. And now we need to provide few more arguments. Next one is basically our function for filtering our data. We will not be using this one. This time we will be using, if we check what we imported here, we will be using this function. So when condition is met, we will do something. When another condition is met, we will do something else, and so on. So let's see how can we apply that. Here I'm gonna type when. I'm gonna open this, and now we need to reference our column. So let's use call function and let's provide column name. Gender. Okay, perfect. So we need to provide now condition. When this gender column is equal to what? Let's provide first M, then we will replace it with male. Now we have our first condition. When our value is M, we will replace it with male. But also we need to provide condition for female. Okay, I don't need this one. Let's here type again when. And now let's again open parentheses. And now let's copy this one because it will be similar. I'm gonna paste it here. So when gender is equal to F, then it will be female. Basically it's very simple. We just need to provide condition and then what will happen if that condition is met. But what in case if we have proper value in our column? For example, if we already have male or female value, what do we need to see in our column? Basically in that case we will just leave that as it is. So for that we will be using otherwise. Then again we need to provide column. So let's provide it like that. Which means that otherwise we will be just leaving those existing values. So this is perfect for us. Now let's try to execute this code. If I run cell, let's see if we have any errors. No, it's completed successfully. And now let's check our data set. Now let's see those values here. We still have some values here if I see correctly. Yes, basically we have some error here in our function. Now let's see what we need to change here. Basically we did everything properly here. This function is correct, but what is important, we didn't save those changes to our variable. So that's the reason why we don't see those values. Basically we didn't save it in our data frame. So let's run this code one more time. And now let's execute this one more time. And now let's check. We have all proper values in our column. So that's perfect. Now with this we completed this first table. And what is left to be done is to export this table to our data lake container. Basically, we will need for this purpose to create again this connection like we did here. And let's see why is that the case. So basically we created a connection for this raw data container. And if we go to our data lake storage, so let's go to this storage here, and so let me go to containers. And now we will be able to see that we have multiple containers. We created connection for this one, but we didn't create connection for this one. So we will need to do that now in order to access this container and import our data here. So how can we do that? We will create another script for that. We will be copying this one. We don't need those basically. We just need this part of code. Let's copy that. And now let's paste it here. Now let's use function to export our data. And later on we will be changing those values that we need to change in this code here. So basically let's first copy this one here. Let's paste it here. And now let's type write. Basically this is function that we will be using for writing our data into data lake storage account. Type dot option. Again we will provide this header parameter. Header. Okay, it's true. So basically we will keep our header. And now let's type CSV. So basically we will be saving this file as CSV, and now we need to provide values here. It will be similar like this one that we provided here for load. Let me show you. Yes, for load, but we will need to change something here. We will need to create different connection. We have connection this data engineering, and in this case let's provide some other value. Let's for example provide name of our data set here. If I do that, this will be our mounting point. And now I will need to provide that also here. So let's first copy this one here. Okay, great. And now I'm gonna need to provide name of my file. Let's provide this here, and instead of row, let's type transformed. Transformed. Okay, perfect. Let's see if we need to change something else. I think, yes, we need to provide this new container here. Transform data. Don't forget to put that. This storage account is same, so basically we don't need to change that. And now we should be able to basically export our data to data lake storage account. So let's try to run this code just to see if we have any errors. It's still running, as you can see, and now we are waiting for Databricks to export it to Azure Data Lake Storage to this transformed data container. We don't have any errors here, but let's check if we have our data here. For now, there is nothing here in this, as you can see, let me show you, in this transformed data container, but if we refresh it, as you can see, now we are able to see our file. This is basically just one file, and inside of that you have multiple values. That's the way that Databricks saves our file, and basically this is our file that we saved here. We can use it later on for exporting to database or something else. So perfect, we created the first transformation. Let's go back to home, and now let's go back to Databricks. Now we need to do the same for next table. Next table in our case will be, first we need to add another cell. The next table will be, let's use sales channel. I think that's the next one. Let me see here. Containers. Raw data. And let's try sales channel basically first, and after that I'm gonna use this payment method. Let me do like this. And let's, for this one, let's comment it out. Sales channel. Okay, perfect. Now we need first to import our data. We already created, as you can see, this connection with this raw data container, and now we are able just to import this file separately. So let's copy this first row here. We already imported, but just different file, and now we will be able to paste it here. And instead of this dim customers row, I'm gonna copy this and paste it here. I'm gonna import this time sales channel row, and let's place this here, and now this will be name of our variable. If I execute this code, I will be able to see that we don't have any errors. Let's add another cell here, and let's copy this one, and I'm gonna be using this show function just to be able to see our data and what we need to change here. You can see we have only two columns. We have sales channel ID and sales channel basically name. So first what we need to do. First we have some null values in these rows, so I'm gonna remove all of these, and after that I'm gonna need to remove those duplicate values. If you remember, we also removed duplicate values from previous table, so it will be simple for us to do that again. Now let's press enter, and first let's remove these null values. How can I do that? I'm gonna use NA drop function for that purpose. So let's copy this one. I'm gonna paste it here. Dot NA, it means null values basically, and drop. So we'll be dropping those NA values. Now, if I execute this, nothing will happen, so I need to assign that to my table. If I run this code, let's run the cell, and if I see my table now, I will be able to see that we don't have any null values now. So next step will be to remove those duplicates. Also we have that drop duplicate option that we already used, so let's use it one more time here. Let's place it here, and this is our data set. We will need to change that. Let's provide new data set. I'm gonna save it also to that new one, and this is drop duplicates function. And now we need to provide new column name. Instead of customer ID, here we have sales channel ID. Sales channel ID. Let's provide it here. And if I run this code, and if I check my table, now I don't have any duplicates here. But there is also one problem. We don't have that data sorted. So let's use sort function again. Basically, function is called order by, so we're going to be using that. Let's copy this one. I'm going to paste it here. Dot order by, and let's provide column name. Column name is sales channel ID. By default it will be descending. We could also use this descending option that we included, but now ascending is perfect for us. If I assign this back to our variable, it will be perfect. Now let's run this code. We don't have any errors, great. Let's run this code here, and now our data is properly sorted. Basically with this we completed this table, and now what we need to do is also to import the data in Azure Data Lake Storage account. So let's copy that code that we included here, and now we will need to change few things here, of course. Let's paste it here. Okay, perfect. Those values will stay the same, and now transform data stays the same. What we also need to provide is this value here. Let me just copy this one here, and let's place it here. Also, let's replace this value, and this value, instead of row, it will be transformed. Now this should work fine. If I run this code, let's check if we have any errors. Okay, perfect, no errors here. And now if I go to that transform data, I will be able to see this second table imported. So great, we completed that second table, and now let's proceed to the next one. Let's add another cell below. Okay, as always we will need to import our data first, so let's copy this code here. I'm gonna paste it here. Okay, perfect. Now our table name will be, let's see how it's called. Raw data. It's this payment method raw data. Let's paste it here, and also this is the table name. So now again, as you can see, we are using this Spark just to read functions from Spark. Read function is to read our data. We need to provide format name, again CSV file, option to keep our header, and also to load basically our data. If I run this code, we don't have any errors, so let's check our data. I'm gonna, instead of this one, I'm gonna paste it here. Let's run cell. And now we will be able to see this payment method table. We also have some null values here, and we are gonna also be deleting that. And basically, this will be the only transformation needed for this table, because all other values are correct. So let's do that. If you remember, for that purpose we used na drop method. So let's copy this one. Let me just copy this. I'm gonna paste it here. .na.drop. And now we need to assign that to this value here. Okay, perfect. And if I execute this, I'll be able to see my code completed. And let's see our table now. Okay, our table is perfect now. What is next step? Next step is always to export our data to data lake storage account. And this time also we will be copying this code from here. I'm gonna paste it here. Okay, perfect. Let me just transform data stays the same. Now let me use this here. Let me provide name here and also name here. You need to change this each time. And let's provide name of that file. Instead of row, I'm gonna just replace that and put transformed. Transformed. Now this should be perfect, except this one here. So let's replace also that one. Dim customers. Now it will be dim payment method. Let me see for this one. As you can see, I forgot for this one to change that, so I will need to replace that one. Basically what we did here, I imported customers data instead of this one, and I just provided correct name. So I will need to replace that. How I'm gonna do that? I'm gonna first remove that I imported. Let's go back to transform data. And in sales channel transformed, let's delete that one. Okay, perfect. Now let's execute that code. Yes, that should be now fine. Okay, now we need to provide new value here. For this, I'm gonna put 1, and I'm gonna mount it here also. I'm gonna put 1, just to be different. Run cell, and let's see now what will happen. Now it's working, and we should be able to see that file also imported. Okay, perfect. Let's check this container. Let's refresh this. And now we have our file imported. Now let's proceed to that next one that we already completed. So we completed here everything. We just need to run this code. And now let's, if I click on this, let's run this. Now this code is executed. Let's go to this Azure Data Lake Storage. Let's refresh that. And now we also have that third file imported. That's perfect. We have only one more file left to be completed. It's basically our sales table. Let's go back to raw data. It's this fact sales. So let's now do the same for that one. It is our table, and now we will need first to import the table. Let's copy this code. Instead of this payment method, it will be fact sales. And now let's provide also that name here instead of this. And this should be fine. Now we will be able to import our data. Let's run this cell. And data is successfully imported. Let's just check our table. So I'm gonna copy this one, paste it here, .show, and let's run this code to be able to see our table. Okay, this is our table. Now we have a lot of columns, so you are not able to see everything properly here. Now we will need to transform something first. Okay, now to be able to see this data better, now let's first remove columns that we don't need. Now let's go back to this cell here, type enter, and let's remove these columns. So first column that I don't need is, let's remove this discount flag. So basically I'm gonna type job, open parentheses, and I'm gonna need to provide only the column name. You just need to provide column name inside of this drop function. I'm gonna assign this back to my table. So let's type like this, and if I do that, I will be able to remove that first column. But it's not the only column that I would like to remove. Let me also copy this. I'm gonna copy a few more times. Now I'm gonna need to just change these column names. Next one will be, let me just remove this customer feedback, I don't need that. Also this warranty ID is not important for us. Let's see what else we have. Employee ID also we can remove. Store ID. Let's copy this again. Progress status ID I don't need also. And let's check if delivery channel ID, I also don't need that. Delivery channel ID, I can also remove that one. And now this should be better. Let's run this code. This way we will be able to remove each of these columns from our data frame. Let's run this. Okay, we don't have any errors. Let's run this cell, and now let's see our data. Now it's much better. We don't have that many columns, so we are now able to see them properly. Now, as you can see, in some columns, for example, this total amount, tax amount, shipping cost, this manufacturing cost, we have those dollar signs inside of them, but basically, if you see here, we also have some dollar signs after these values. So basically this means that these are text values, not the currency. So we will remove all these dollar signs from our columns. So let's do that now. That is the next step in our transformation. Let's use our data set. Okay, perfect. Now let's type equal. Now I'm gonna apply on our data set with column function. You will be able to see why. With column, and now let's provide column. Column will be first total amount. Of course we need to put that in quotes. So on that column I'm gonna apply some function. Now we can see that we already did some transformation similar to this one. Basically for that purpose we're gonna be using that replace function, if you remember. Let me just show you. As you can see, it is this function here. So let me copy this from here just to show you how you can apply that function. Okay, let's paste it here. And now this is our column name that we provided. Also, this is replace function. So what we need to replace? We need to replace in this type column. It was in previous case. Now it's this total amount column. In that column we need to replace, we had that type. Now it's dollar sign. And we need to replace that with what? With nothing. So we will leave this as it is. Now we have few more columns for which we need to do the same. So let's copy this. We have 4 columns exactly, I think. No, we have 5. So first one is total amount. Next one is tax amount. Let's check. It's total amount, tax amount, shipping cost, this manufacturing costs, and we have at the end profit. We are not now able to see it, but we're gonna also be changing that. So tax amount, let's copy this one, paste it here. Next one is shipping cost. Shipping cost. Okay, perfect. Let's also copy that here. Next one is manufacturing cost. Let me just copy like this. Manufacturing cost, perfect. Copy here, and last one is profit. Profit, and let's type here also profit. Profit. Okay, now that we provided those columns, let's run this code and let's check if our function will do the job. As you can see, we have some error here. Manufacturing cost. Let's check what is the problem here. As you can see, it's costs. So I need to add S here, and now let's do that one more time. Again, shipping costs. In this case, it's basically cost, not for this one, but for this one. Yes, it's completed properly, and now let's check our data set. If I run this show function, now as you can see, we still have values in those columns. Here's the thing, this character here is basically keyword in this replace function, so we will need to skip that somehow, and for that purpose I'm gonna be using just those two slashes. So let's do the same for next one. Also for this one here, for this one, and perfect. Let's run this code now. It should be able to work properly. Let's see our data. And now as you can see, now these dollar signs are removed. Now we have our data properly formatted and we are able to proceed to next step. Let's see what will be our next step. Basically, as you can see, we have some space inside. Inside these cells. So for some we have normal values and for some we have space. So let's fix that first. Let me show you how you can do that. I'm gonna type enter here, and now I'm gonna copy this variable, and also again I'm gonna be using this with column. Let's copy that here and open parentheses. Now what we need to provide? Again, we need of course to provide column name. We're gonna be providing all column names that we already used. Column name. Also, next one is function that we will be using. Previously we used this replace function, and now we will be using trim function for that purpose. Let's type trim, open that function, and now I'm gonna need to provide column name. For that purpose I'm gonna be using this call, of course, and inside of these brackets let's provide basically our column name. So let's see what this function is doing. Basically, on this total amount column, we are applying this trim function, and it requires one argument, again our column name, its total amount. So if I assign this back to our variable, and if I run this code, I'll be able to see that it's working. But let me do the same for all the other columns. So let's copy this 4 more times. Okay, perfect. And now let's provide these other column names. Now we completed that, and now let's run this code. Let's see what will happen. It is completed without errors, so let's check our data. Now let's see these columns. As you can see, we don't have any more space in these columns. Okay, that's perfect. Now that we completed that, we are able to save this file to Azure Data Lake Storage account. So we are going to be using same code like we did here. We will just need to change few parameters. So let me just, instead of now I'm gonna using, instead of this here, I'm gonna be using fact sales. Instead of this, also fact sales, and table will be fact sales transformed. And instead of this variable here, we'll be exporting fact sales basically. Just for you to understand, we are completing all these changes on this variable here. It is basically our table, data set, data frame, whatever you call it. And then we are using that here and just basically exporting that table to this location here that we created by using this code. Because this fact sales table is bigger and it will create multiple partitions, which means that it will create few separate files. For example, file 1 will contain, for example, 1000 rows, file 2 1000 rows, and so on, because it's bigger file. And now I would like to specify that I would like to have only one file. So let's do that. Let's type like this. Repartition, and let's provide number 1 inside of this. If I provide 2, I will get 2 partitions. If I provide 3, 3 partitions, and so on. So let's assign this back to our data set. I think it's also necessary to do that, yes. And now I'm able to run my code. Let's click on this, run cell, and let's check if we have any errors. Now it's completed, and let's check if we have that file in our storage. Absolutely. Now everything is perfect. We transformed and imported our files to this transformed data container.